A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to the news analysis session by Bajirao IAS Academy. So today we have some important articles from the Hindu newspaper. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important articles. So one thing that you should remember about these articles is that they are very important for your prelims examination as well as the mains examination. And in fact, these topics are actually already asked in your examination, whether it is prelims examination or mains examination. So one such topic that we will be discussing is about El Nino and La Nina. So we'll try to understand about this phenomena of El Nino and La Nina in a very detailed manner, right? So this is actually a weather phenomena, and this weather phenomena also influences India's monsoon. So when we talk about El Nino, it is a weather phenomena and that impacts the southwest monsoon. So that would result in drought-like conditions in India. But when we talk about a condition like La Nina, it would result in forest fires. It would result in drought-like conditions on the Indian subcontinent. And that is why it is very important for us to understand these two weather phenomena in a very detailed manner. However, the context is that why it is asked, why it is given in today's newspaper is that India is going to experience the southwest monsoon very soon. And 1st of June, we are going to get the southwest monsoon. However, still we have no idea this southwest monsoon will be impacted by El Nino or La Nina, right? So still the weather forecast is not clear. So the meteorological conditions prevailing is not clear. And in fact, it is said that India waits eagerly for the summer monsoon forecast. So we are still waiting for the summer monsoon forecast, because this summer monsoon can either be impacted by El Nino or La Nina. So still we are not aware about this. And in fact, the fate of the monsoon also raises the question whether the year 25-26 will be an El Nino year or a La Nina year. So imagine that if it is an El Nino year, so it would result in drought-like conditions. It would result in drought-like conditions. It would result in forest fires all across Indian subcontinent, and it would also result in low agriculture production as well. However, if it is a La Nina year, so it would result in flood-like conditions, or it would result in floods, and it would also result in crop losses, or it essentially means that excess rainfall above normal rainfall. So that is what is called as the La Nina condition. So how La Nina conditions impact the Indian monsoon? So we will understand this. So if you look at the syllabus point of view of El Nino and La Nina, so in syllabus it may be part of your general studies paper 1, as well as it may be asked in your prelims examination as well, right? So in your prelims examination also you might be asked what exactly El Nino and what is La Nina, right? So we will be understanding what is El Nino, what is La Nina, and what are the causes of these two different weather phenomena, and what is their impact on India, and what is their impact at the global level. So we'll try to understand this in a very broad and detailed manner. And the next topic is that we are going to discuss, it is about freebies, right? So this is about the culture of freebies, because recently Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar stressed on this freebie culture which is existing in India, right? So freebies culture is not good for the efficiency of any economy. So that's why there is a strong debate against this freebies culture. So we are living in a democracy, and there are multiple political parties existing, and each political party to come to power, they're just announcing these freebies to attract or mobilize voters, and that could be a strain on the fiscal resources of this country. And that's why there is a strong call against these freebies or freebies culture which is existing across the country. And in this article, we will be understanding about what is freebies, what are freebies, and why the governments have been adopting the path of freebies, and what are the other alternatives that we actually have. So we will also understand this in a very comprehensive manner. However, when it comes to the syllabus, it will be important for your general studies mains, both paper 2 and paper 3 as well. And the next very important topic, so this is important for both prelims and mains examination, so that is recently a new grouping called squad has been launched, right? So this is a new grouping called squad has been launched. Like how we have Quad, India, Australia, Japan and US are part of the squad group, quad grouping, right? So India is actually part of the quad grouping, but India is not part of the this new squad grouping, right? So 4 countries have come together and they have formed this squad grouping. However, remember, India is not part of this squad grouping. So we will understand what is the squad grouping and when it was formed and what is its objective, right? So we'll understand everything about the squad grouping. However, when it comes to your syllabus for prelims examination, it is very important, and for general studies paper 2 also, this squad grouping is important. So you might be asked which of the following are countries which are part of the squad grouping. Remember, India is not part of the squad grouping. India is actually part of quad grouping. India is part of the quad grouping. However, if you look at the countries which are part of the squad grouping, so countries including Japan, Australia, Philippines and US. So these 4 countries are part of squad grouping but not India. So we'll understand the objective, why this squad grouping has been formed despite there is an existence of a grouping called quad grouping. So we will understand that in a very detailed manner. So these are some topics that we will be discussing today. Now firstly, we'll try to understand what is El Nino and also La Nina, right? So firstly, we need to look into the El Nino. So what exactly El Nino, a phenomena, a weather phenomena? So as I have already told you that this is a weather phenomena, right? So weather phenomena, and it is primarily a result of increasing sea surface temperatures. Increasing sea surface temperatures, a main reason for the frequency of El Nino. The frequency of El Nino, the reason is increasing sea surface temperatures. Now on this image, you can clearly see that this is Pacific Ocean. So this is a vast Pacific Ocean. So in vast Pacific Oceans, in normal years, generally what happens is that the western coast of South America, so western coast of South America comes under the influence of cold Peruvian current, right? So it comes under the influence of cold Peruvian current. So this cold Peruvian current would result in formation of a high pressure area. So it results in formation of high pressure area. But on the other hand, the western Pacific Oceans would have a low pressure area. So they would have a low pressure area. So that would result in movement of these trade winds from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean. So this is what happens during a normal year. So this is how winds move from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean. And in this normal year, when winds are moving from the moisture laden winds are moving from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean, so they also augment the Indian monsoon as well. They also augment Indian monsoon, particularly the southwest monsoon as well. However, when we talk about El Nino like a condition, so when we discuss about El Nino, it actually means that this situation is completely reversed. Right? How this situation will be completely reversed? On the eastern Pacific Ocean, low pressure area is being formed, and the western Pacific Ocean high pressure area is being formed. So instead of these winds moving from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean, the wind pattern changes to the eastern Pacific Ocean, and that would result in heavy rainfall. That would result in heavy rainfall over this area. So this area actually experiences heavy rainfall. But on the other hand, this area experiences scarcity of rainfall. Australia, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and in fact, India also experiences drought-like conditions because of the El Nino phenomenon. El Nino weather phenomenon. So I hope it is clear for you. You have understood this. So it is just the movement, the change in the movement of wind patterns from the western Pacific Ocean to the eastern Pacific Ocean. So that is completely opposite to what happens during the normal times. So understand, definition or introduction of El Nino has been given here. Right? So as I have already told you that this is a climate phenomenon. El Nino is just a climate phenomenon, and this climate phenomenon is characterized by what? Warming of sea surface temperatures. Right? So warming of sea surface temperatures in the central and also the eastern Pacific Ocean. So this area that you can see, so this area would become much more warmer. So warmer oceans means that a low pressure area is being formed, and this low pressure area can actually attract winds from different parts into it, and thereby that would result in heavy rainfall. So heavy rainfall is not happens during the normal year, right? So thereby this area would come under the influence of drought-like conditions, forest fires, scarce rainfall, right? But on the other hand, this area experiences heavy rainfall. So this is completely opposite what happens during the normal periods of time. And in fact, El Nino is actually considered part of El Nino Southern Oscillation Cycle. And that also includes La Nina. La Nina is also another climate phenomenon. So La Nina is also completely opposite to El Nino. So La Nina is completely opposite to the El Nino phenomenon. However, during the La Nina times, the normal wind movements would further intensify. The normal wind movement would further intensify during the La Nina period, and thereby this part, Australia, Indonesia, India, Southeast Asia, so they experience heavy rainfall, and sometimes it will lead to the floods as well. Sometimes it will lead to the floods as well in the Australia, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and India. So that is what the difference between El Nino and La Nina. So I hope you have understood this. It is clear for you. Now we'll understand briefly. So what are the major causes of El Nino? Right? So what are the causes? There are certain factors which primarily influences the formation of El Nino. So firstly, weakening or reversal of trade winds in the Pacific Ocean. Right. So if you take the Pacific Ocean, for example, this is the western coast of, or eastern Pacific, right? So sorry, western Pacific, sorry, eastern Pacific, and this area is western Pacific. Understand, during normal times what happens is that this area comes under the influence of cold currents. It comes under the influence of cold currents, and this area comes under the influence of warm sea surface temperatures. Warm sea surface temperatures. This is the condition during the normal times. So this results in formation of low pressure area, and this results in formation of high pressure area, and winds generally move from the high pressure area to the low pressure area. So that would result in a decent amount of rainfall over Indian subcontinent. Decent amount of rainfall over the Indian subcontinent, because understand, this is a normal year. But on the other hand, what happens during the El Nino year? During El Nino year, this phenomena would be completely changed. So it is a complete opposite of normal year. El Nino is a complete opposite of normal year. So how it is a complete opposite? Now here, the cold current, it is weak. So it is a weak cold current, and weak cold current, apart from that, this low pressure area is being formed over the eastern Pacific Ocean, and high pressure area is being formed over the western Pacific Ocean. So thereby winds started moving towards the eastern Pacific Ocean or central Pacific Ocean. So thereby the western Pacific Ocean is deprived of rainfall, but on the other hand, the eastern Pacific Ocean would experience heavy rainfall. So this justifies the first point, that weakening or reversal of trade winds in the Pacific Ocean. So either the trade winds got weakens, or the trade winds would be reversed from the normal phenomena. So it is not like a normal phenomena, because the trade winds started reversing, right? So this is the first cause of El Nino. And the second cause of El Nino is that the warm water shift eastwards, right? So warm waters of the oceans would started shifting towards the eastward, right, or East Pacific Ocean. So now the East Pacific Ocean would have the warmer ocean waters. So warmer ocean water means it can form the low pressure area. So low pressure area means it can experience high rainfall. It can actually experience high rainfall. So the third point is that a disruption of water circulation. So this is how winds are actually circulate around the globe, right? So these are the southeasterly trade winds and northeasterly trade winds, and these are westerly trade winds. So during El Nino times also, the disruption of water circulation actually takes place. And similarly, the reduction of upwelling of cold nutrient rich water of the Peruvian coast. So of the Peruvian coast, the upwelling of cold water would not take place, right? For example, if upwelling of cold water would actually takes place, so it would result in cold conditions, a cold water condition. So cold water conditions would result in formation of a high pressure area. So high pressure area means, so it will not result in the formation of El Nino like condition, rather it is just a normal year where it forms high pressure area. But on the other hand, the western Pacific Ocean, there is a low pressure area, and that further intensifies the Indian monsoon as well. So these are some causes of El Nino like conditions. However, we need to understand the effects of El Nino, the global impact as well as the impact of El Nino on India. So if you can look at the global impact of El Nino, so we have understood that the formation of high pressure area over this particular region due to El Nino would result in what? So high pressure area means this region would be deprived of rainfall or rainfall scarcity. There will be a lesser rainfall, increased temperatures, right? So this region would experience high temperatures, and this region would also have forest fires as well. Forest fires or wildfires are also experienced by this particular region because of El Nino, right? So droughts are being experienced in places like Australia and eastern parts of Africa and even in India. So we might see drought-like conditions during El Nino. But on the other hand, the Eastern Pacific Ocean or the Central Pacific Ocean, so they experience heavy rainfall and even flooding as well. However, this don't happen during the normal year. During the normal year, this actually don't happen, right? So in normal year, Indian monsoon, we get actually a decent rainfall because of the Indian monsoon, and also there will be no extreme levels of temperature increase or drought like conditions. Forest fires would not actually takes place in normal year. But during El Nino times, these different types of weather extremes actually takes place. And in fact, there will be increased cyclone activity such as hurricanes in the Pacific, and few hurricanes in Atlantic Ocean can also be experienced during the El Nino times. And the fishery industry of this region would be collapsed. And in fact, during the normal year, due to upwelling, there is a huge fish population, and fish catching is also a flourishing industry on the eastern part of Pacific Ocean, particularly the southern part of America. But this place, the warm waters would be replaced by, the cold waters would be replaced by warm waters. Cold water would be replaced by warm waters. Now warm waters would further reduces the fish population of the Peruvian coast. Thereby the fishery industry will also be collapsed. And in fact, extreme wildfires or forest fires, wildfires plus forest fires, will also takes place in this area, right? So Indonesia, India, Australia, because of higher temperatures, it would result in wildfires and forest fires as well. So these are some global effects of El Nino. Now what is the impact of El Nino on India? So El Nino also impact India as well. So what is its impact on India? So it would result in weakened monsoon, right? So it will weaken the Indian monsoon, particularly the southwest monsoon of India will get weakened. So thereby we may experience reduced rainfall, and that's why El Nino is a concern for us, because if it is an El Nino year, that significantly impacts the southwest monsoon and we get lesser rainfall or reduced rainfall, and even we may experience drought-like conditions as well. And even it would result in wildfires, it would also result in forest fires. So therefore El Nino is certainly a concern for us. So that's why we are very eager to know whether this particular year is El Nino year or La Nina year. And understand one thing, that if we experience drought-like conditions, if we experience scarcity in the overall rainfall, don't you think that it will reduce the agricultural production, right? So it will result in lower crop yield, and it will also impact India's overall food security. And in fact, in India, rural economy is completely dependent on the monsoon rainfall, because most of the land that we have is rain-fed in nature, So in India, most of the land that we have is rain fed in nature, and it will definitely impact the rural economy as well. And in case if there is a lesser agricultural produce, so that can also increase prices of various commodities, and it will also result in conditions like increasing inflation in India, right? Because lower agricultural produce because of drought like conditions, and lower agricultural produce means increasing the prices of various commodities, and it would further drive the inflation like conditions as well. And apart from that, we should also talk about heat waves. Indian subcontinent would experience heat waves. So heat waves is also one of the major disaster that has in recent times has resulted in mortality of number of individuals, and in fact the intensity and the frequency of such heat waves has been increasing manifold, and that is particularly a concern for a country like India. And El Nino is one of the main driving force behind the increased frequency and intensity of the heat wave like conditions. And El Nino like conditions would also increases the temperatures over the Indian subcontinent, particularly on India, and that increases energy consumption, and it also increases demand of energy, right? So increased consumption and increased energy demand, that would result in increased production of energy from the existing thermal power plants, and the other factor is that if we have a less rainfall or scarcity of rainfall, we will not have adequate reserve water in our dams and reservoirs, and we may not be able to produce hydroelectricity power, and thereby this will further increase our reliance on fossil fuels like coal, and overall it would contribute to the emissions of greenhouse gases and further contribute to the global warming as well. So that's how El Nino actually impacts India. And you can also understand the impact of El Nino, what exactly is El Nino and how it is going to impact India. So we actually discussed everything that is actually given here. Now what is La Nina? So it is also very important for us to understand La Nina in a bit detailed manner, right? So we'll try to understand, we have actually understand what exactly is El Nino. Now in normal times generally what happens, this is Eastern Pacific Ocean, right? So this is Eastern Pacific Ocean. I'm explaining this in normal scenario, okay? So in normal scenario, Eastern Pacific Ocean comes under the influence of cold Peruvian current. So cold Peruvian current means high pressure area is being formed in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. However, this Western Pacific Ocean would experience high sea surface temperatures. It experiences high sea surface temperatures because it comes under the influence of warm current. And when it comes under the influence of warm current, the low pressure area is formed in the Western Pacific Ocean. So generally winds move from the high pressure area to the low pressure area. Now when winds are moving from the high pressure area to the low pressure area over Australia, Indonesia, don't you think that these winds also carry moisture? So they carry moisture, and it would result in heavy rainfall over all these different places, and it can even augment the Indian monsoon as well, right? But El Nino is completely different of what we have just understood. However, La Nina is further intensification of this normal condition. So what does it mean, further intensification of the normal condition, right? So it comes under the influence of a strong cold current. right? So it comes under the influence of strong cold current. So that means a high pressure area with a higher intensity is formed, and similarly the low pressure area with a much higher intensity is being formed, and thereby a movement of wind from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean with a higher intensity would result in more rainfall over this area, right? So it would result in more rainfall over this area, and in fact it would also augment the southwest monsoon, and thereby India also experiences excess rainfall, right? So intensification of this low pressure area over the western Pacific Ocean would also augment the southwest monsoon, and thereby India would also experiences the higher rainfall, right? So La Nina results in floods. La Nina might result in floods Indonesia, Australia, Africa, and even over the Indian subcontinent as well, and it might lead to the crop losses as well, right? So El Nino also result in crop losses because floods would also damage the crops. So I hope it is clear the difference between El Nino and La Nina. And similarly, La Nina is also a climate phenomenon. And this climate phenomenon, which is characterized by cooler than average sea surface temperatures. So cooler than average sea surface temperatures over the eastern Pacific Ocean or central Pacific Ocean. But on the other hand, western Pacific Ocean, warmer than average sea surface temperatures. And in fact, La Nina is considered as the opposite phase of El Nino, right? So this is an opposite phase of El Nino, and La Nina is also part of El Nino Southern Oscillation cycle, right? So it will result in increased or strong trade winds that flow from the eastern Pacific Ocean to the western Pacific Ocean, and here you can also observe the increased or intensified upwelling, and the fish industry will also flourish during the times of La Nina as well. So I hope this is clear for you, El Nino and La Nina. So what will be the impact of La Nina on India? So we have to understand the impact of La Nina on India. So one thing is that it will result in much more stronger monsoons, right? So the above normal rainfall leading to the excess flood like conditions, and on this map you can clearly see the vulnerability, the flood vulnerability of India. So how India is vulnerable to floods. Around 75 lakh hectares of land is impacted in case of floods, and a loss and damage. So therefore India is also excessively vulnerable to the floods, and in fact because of La Nina we experience higher rainfall or excess rainfall, surplus rainfall, and surplus rainfall means the dams and reservoirs are filled with the water, and we could also use the water for the agricultural purposes, for drinking water purposes. However, if rainfall is excess than the normal, sometimes it may damage the crops as well. It may damage crops, and it may result in the crop losses as well. Sometimes it may drive the inflation as well. And La Nina conditions would also be associated with declining temperatures over the Indian subcontinent, and we may experience colder winters in the northern part of India. And there are certain economic benefits as well because of the La Nina like conditions, such as increased availability of water for the agriculture sector and even hydropower generation. And there are certain negative effects also that are being associated with La Nina, such as flood damage to crops, landslides in hilly regions, and even urban flooding as well. So these are some negative impacts and positive impacts which are associated with the La Nina. And the next very important topic is, recently Vice President calls for debate on freebies. because freebies is in a very important area, so that is regularly in news, right? So it is important for us to understand what are these freebies and why they are in news, and what are the negative consequences of negative implications of freebies, and how we can actually address these freebies, right? So what are freebies? So freebies are actually the government funded programs. For example, free electricity is promised for people of Delhi, free water, free transportation for women in Delhi, and free transportation in public transportation of states like Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. So they are considered as freebies. So despite people have the capacity to afford the public goods, the government has been providing them for free. So it is for the purpose of mobilizing voters, consolidating the existing vote bank. And that is why these freebies are very often in news in recent times. However, providing freebies would have severe implications for the economic efficiency of any state or any country. And in fact, recently we have also seen direct cash transfers by the governments. However, these direct cash transfers also have no productivity, right? So for example, the government of Telangana state previously transferred rupees 10 lakh into the accounts of scheduled castes, right? So there is no productive or productivity is not associated with it, but government has been transferring money into the accounts of people through the direct benefit transfer, and this might be considered as part of freebies. So this is what is called as freebies. So I have already given you the example that women are given free travel in state transportation buses of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Delhi. Free water is being provided, free electricity is being provided, and in fact subsidies, government also provide subsidies. Now we need to differentiate between freebies and subsidies. Government also gives subsidies, but these subsidies aimed at specific economic needs. For example, government gives agricultural subsidies. No doubt the farmers are farmers are deprived sections, right? So most of the farmers are small and marginal farmers, and most of them are not getting the remunerative prices for their crops, and increasing input cost is also one challenge that the farmers have been facing. So in this context, the government is coming forward, and government has been providing fertilizer subsidy on seeds, and government has also been procuring the crop or produce under the MSP regime. So this might form part of the agriculture subsidy. And similarly, food subsidy as well. There are several BPL families in India, and those BPL families would get subsidized food under the public distribution system. So these are examples of subsidies, but on the other hand, these are the examples of freebies to consolidate the existing vote bank to mobilize voters. However, keeping this in mind, recently Vice President of India Jagdeep Dhankar has stressed on subsidies where necessary, right? So subsidies should be provided because subsidies have been providing, or they are ensuring food security for the below poverty line populations. And agricultural subsidies are also protecting the farmers as well, right? So he stressed on the necessity of some essential subsidies, right? So however, these subsidized benefits should be directly transferred into the accounts of beneficiaries, and we need to follow the models of developed countries like US, where farm subsidies are considered very transparent and they are efficiently distributed to the eligible beneficiaries as well. So this is the method that Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has suggested. Now, fiscal sustainability of the freebies. So we need to understand this aspect as well. So how sustainable the freebies are. So freebies actually impose significant financial burdens on the state and central governments. No doubt about that, because the central government or state government have to borrow money to finance these freebies. And even in India, we have been facing the problem of fiscal deficit, right? So fiscal deficit is the total expenditure exceeds the total revenue. So therefore, freebies can actually impose financial burdens on the state and central governments. And in fact, it would result in higher fiscal deficits in our country. Thereby, it has been forcing governments to cut funds on essential sectors such as education, healthcare, development of infrastructure. So these are very important sectors that the government has to focus. And if you look at the healthcare, the total healthcare expenditure in India is less than 1.5% of its GDP. However, several developed countries have been spending more than 6% of their GDP on the healthcare sector. So if governments are giving such freebies, how can government finance essential social sectors such as healthcare, education and infrastructure? And that is the key question we need to address here. And apart from that, without a structured investment approach, resources may be allocated, or they are misallocated, affecting long-term economic growth. So thereby it is suggested that there should be a structured investment approach that has to be followed. And secondly, electoral impact and population allurements or populist allurements. For example, we have a multiple political parties, a multi-party political system in India that we have. So in order to attract the voters, the political parties have just started announcing the freebies, such as giving money to the woman, or without any productive reason or productive purpose, or free bus rides, free electricity. So such freebies are announced by different political parties if they are voted to the power, right? So freebies are very often used as election strategies to attract the voters. And Jagdeep Dhankar pointed out that governments once elected often struggle with financial burdens of fulfilling these promises, because governments don't have money. Once they come to power, they failed to implement these freebies because they don't have adequate funds to finance these freebies. However, several solutions have been proposed for managing these freebies, such as there should be a clear framework, and this framework guide or define the welfare schemes which can qualify for the essential subsidies and which are politically motivated freebies, right? So we need to differentiate, so which are considered as essential freebies and which are considered as politically motivated freebies, and for that we need to have a clear framework. And similarly, there should be a parliamentary oversight over the economic policies that can actually balance social welfare along with the fiscal responsibility, and this is the second solution. And apart from that, we have to introduce direct benefit transfer for the transfer of subsidies, right? So thereby we can actually eliminate leakages and we can also prevent corruption. For example, one such initiative is JAM Trinity, Jandan Aadhar Mobile Trinity, and that has already streamlined the benefit transfers. So thereby we have to expand the direct benefit transfer to all major government welfare schemes, and that would result in improving efficiency and accountability in India. And apart from that, linking benefits to employment generation, skill development, community services can actually make schemes self-sustaining. And instead of providing free electricity to the consumers, we have to incentivize the renewable energy adaptation through the solar power subsidies. For that, the government has launched Surya Ghar Yojana, right? So we need to undertake such measures, such innovative measures, and ultimately the debate on freebies is essential, and it is very important to ensure responsible governance and fiscal discipline in India. However, So whatever welfare schemes that the government has launched, so these welfare schemes actually have important role in reducing poverty, and they should be financially sustainable and also efficiently targeted to the eligible beneficiaries. And there is also a need to eliminate the ghost beneficiaries as well. And apart from that, so you can also go through the definition, examples of freebies and impact of freebies, and what is the stand of the Supreme Court through this particular image. And next topic is Philippines keen on India joining Squad. So Squad is also a security alliance, a strategic alliance like Quad, right? So in Quad, India, US, Australia and Japan are part of, but in this Squad India is not part of. Instead, USA, Japan, Philippines, Australia, they come together and they have formed Squad initiative. So they have formed Squad grouping. So they primarily aimed at ensuring regional security and stability, aiming at the South China Sea. So China is considered as a key threat in the region, and they have come together to deal with the Chinese threat. Now, if you can look at the details of Squad as a grouping, so this is considered as mini-lateral. So there are some groupings which can be considered as multilateral, there are some groupings which can be considered as bilateral, but Squad is a mini-lateral grouping, and this consisting of USA, Japan, Philippines and Australia. And in fact, Squad as a grouping, it primarily focuses on addressing the security dynamics in the South China Sea. So there are certain security related threats, vulnerabilities, and Squad specifically focuses on those security dynamics and also countering Chinese assertive actions in the vast Indo-Pacific region, right? And in fact, here we can actually say that Squad is a complementary, it is not a substitute, rather it is a complementary to the already existing Quad initiative, right? So in Quad India is part of, but in Squad India is not part of it. So what are the objectives of Squad grouping? So the objectives: promotion of peace, stability, deterrence in the Indo-Pacific region, and it also focuses on military interoperability between all these member countries, and for that they actually conduct regular joint patrols, and these regular joint patrols essentially aimed at addressing key security challenges. And they also focus on intelligence sharing and also the maritime security cooperation. However, Squad would face certain challenges. So the main challenge it would face is that Chinese opposition to the Squad alliance. And in fact, China has been looking at Squad initiative as a containment and exacerbating the regional tensions. And in fact, the other major challenge that Squad grouping might face is potential strain due to divergent strategic interests among the member countries. So all member countries don't have the common interest. So divergent strategic interests among all these member nations, similar to the Quad grouping. However, what are the main implications of this Squad grouping? So emergence of this Squad alliance reshapes the existing geopolitical landscape of the Indo-Pacific, and it is expected to complement already existing Quad grouping, and it also highlights the intensifying competition between US-led alliance and China for influence and control over the vast Indo-Pacific region in general and South China Sea in particular. And it could impact the regional security dynamics, international relations, with implications for global trade and economic stability. And it has to be seen how India would play a larger role as part of the Quad grouping, and Philippines also expects that India would become part of the Squad grouping, and it has to be seen how Asian countries would react to this Squad grouping as well. So anyway, that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our lecture, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.